Volume 1, Book 4, number 186. Narrated by Amr. My father saw Amr bin Abi Hassan asking Abdullah bin Zayd about the ablution of the Prophet. Abdullah bin Zayd asked for earthenware pot containing water and in front of them performed ablution like that of the Prophet. He poured water from the pot over his hand and washed his hands thrice, and then he put his hands in the pot and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out with 3 handfuls of water. Again he put his hand in the water and washed his face thrice and washed his forearms up to the elbows twice, and then put his hands in the water and then passed them over his head by bringing them to the front and then to the rear of the head once, and then he washed his feet up to the ankles. Volume 1, Book 4, number 187. Narrated by Abu Juhayfa. Allah's apostle came to us at noon and water for ablution was brought to him. After he had performed ablution, the remaining water was taken by the people and they started smearing their bodies with it, as a blessed thing. The Prophet offered 2 rakat of the Zuhr prayer and then 2 rakat of the Asr prayer while an Anza, spearheaded stick, was there, as a sutra, in front of him. Abu Musa said, the Prophet asked for a tumbler containing water and washed both his hands and face in it and then threw a mouthful of water in the tumbler and said to both of us, Abu Musa and Bilal, drink from the tumbler and pour some of its water on your faces and chests. Volume 1, Book 4, number 188. Narrated by Ibn Shihab. Mahmud bin Arabi, who was the person on whose face the Prophet had ejected a mouthful of water from his family's well while he was a boy, and Urwa, on the authority of Al-Miswar and others, who testified each other, said, whenever the Prophet performed ablution, his companions were nearly fighting for the remains of the water. Volume 1, Book 4, number 189. Narrated by Sahi bin Yazid. My aunt took me to the Prophet and said, O Allah's apostle, this son of my sister has got a disease in his legs. So he passed his hands on my head and prayed for Allah's blessings for me. Then he performed ablution and I drank from the remaining water. I stood behind him and saw the seal of prophethood between his shoulders, and it was like the Zir al-Hijla, means the button of a small tent, but some said, egg of a partridge, etc. Volume 1, Book 4, number 190. Narrated by Amr bin Yahya. On the authority of his father, Abdullah bin Zayd poured water on his hands from a utensil containing water and washed them, and then with 1 handful of water he rinsed his mouth and cleaned his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out. He repeated it thrice. He then washed his hands and forearms up to the elbows twice and passed wet hands over his head, both forwards and backwards, and washed his feet up to the ankles and said, this is the ablution of Allah's apostle.